Hello, everybody. Welcome. So I'm just giving you guys a few seconds to arrive because it takes YouTube a minute. Welcome to our first Red September live. Woo! So this is kind of a pre-live, a pre-readathon live where we're going to be announcing the details of the readathon. We'll be giving TBRs / some of us will be offering recommendations in addition to TBRs, etc. So we'll talk about prompts, we'll talk about dates, and we'll say hello to the chat. Hello, Cool Gamer. Welcome, Cool Gamer 2. I remember Cool Gamer has been to several live streams, so is this the same Cool Gamer or is this a new Cool Gamer?
This is Cool Gamer 2. So
Cool Gamer 2.
Yes.
Hi, Rosa. Welcome.
Nice
and
song.
Penny.
Oh, yay.
Penny's been on a Russia kick, so I'm really excited that she's here.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So would you guys like to, these are my co-hosts. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves? You want to start, Courtney?
Sure. Hello, everybody. I am Courtney from the channel. I think it's Courtney Reads on Instagram. There's an S, Courtney's Reads. I think that's how it is. And I am really into Russian literature, so that's why I wanted to be involved in this.
I love that. That's where I started too. It was the literature that got me going. Tony, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Tony. I am at Tony Paul Cross on Instagram. Imaginative name. I'm in this because I'm quite into reading history. I did a history degree. Christy and I have been doing. In fact, some of you might all have watched our live show yesterday on Trotsky's history of the Russian Revolution. I'm really fascinated by. I have always been fascinated by communist and anarchist history, so that's what I'm here for.
Excellent, thank you. We're so glad you're here, and Courtney, and Faith. Would you like to go next?
Yes, my name is Faith, and I have a YouTube channel, Faith and Books. And I don't know how well. I don't know. I do a lot of reading with Christy. And somehow I don't know how I got roped into this. Anyway, I think it will be really fascinating because many decades ago, I was a poli-sci major and I took a Russian history course, and I sort of left it all behind a long time ago, and I'm really I'm excited about renewing my acquaintance with Russian history. I think I've forgotten a lot. And so I'm getting really excited about this readathon. I'm really interested. So
we're so glad you're here because you're already reading the Gulag Archipelago right
now.
Yeah,
right? I'm only like in halfway through chapter 2 though, which is a very long chapter. Yes, and I'm loving it. It's fascinating. So yeah.
I'm so glad. And we're going to be planning to. That's going to be part of our TBR, so we'll talk about that some more. Mimi's here. Hi, Mimi. Mimi has been following along with the history of the Russian Revolution. So, and Peg, last but not least.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Peg at the History Shelf. That's my channel. I love history, and it's so funny that both Christy and Courtney, say that their entrance into Russian history was through Russian literature, a love of Russian literature. And I'm the exact opposite. I started off with a love of Russian history, right? And then I was kind of drawn into it. Let me check out some of these major classics, these major writers. And then I got drawn into Dostoevsky, and we read the brothers Karamazov like several years ago. Remember that, Christy?
Yeah, great time.
We read, and then Faith and Christy and I were reading Notes from the Underground. So I love the fact that my love of Russian history is pulling me into the orbit of Russian literature. So, but yeah, I've just had a lifelong fascination with Russian history into the Soviet era as well. So I really just love, from like middle to the end of Middle Ages towards the end of the collapse of the Soviet Union. So, and of course, there's so much history being made today with Russia, and we're seeing books coming out that are reflecting, is communism making its way back up, into Russia? We've got the, Putin, he's an authoritarian, but has he really, you can take the man out of the KGB, but you can't take the KGB
Yes, that's a conversation. That is like a whole question that I would really love to answer. Maybe it won't happen this Red September, but it's like one of those lifelong questions that I'm like, what? Like Russia, just Russian history is I don't get it very well. Like I've been reading about it, but how is today's Russia different than the Soviet Union? That's like a big question to me, because to me it's like it doesn't look that different to me. So
exactly, right? So this is going to be a fun month. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to just showing you some of the books that I've read over the years, and books I'm looking forward to reading this month. So happy to be here with my my august co-hosts here.
Yes. Oh, well, I'm so glad. This is like the perfect group for this. So thank you guys so much for doing this with me. Absolutely. And yes, that is so true.
Yes. Yeah. So true. I read a lot of historical fiction, and that's another way to introduce people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Good observation.
Very good observation. That's something I loved about Jenny is movies, television, historical fiction, whatever. She was like, any way to enter into history is a valid way. And Tony and I were partly doing history of the Russian Revolution because I was supposed to be buddy reading it with Jenny. So as always, Jenny is on my mind. So missing her. And I know Mimi is as well. And Tony as well. And Faith. So anyways, let's move into some of the details of the read along. So this is our first live. We're going to be having a live screen share of the movie The Death of Stalin. That's what it's called, right? I think that's
yes.
Yeah. I'll show you guys. I'll like screen share a picture of it here. This is the movie actually that Tony recommended to me. And I watched it and it was so funny. And so I'm really excited to screen share it with you guys. So this will be, I'll show you the date here. Just wanted to, here's the movie.
Yes.
So yeah, as you can guess, this is about the death of Stalin.
Yeah.
It's
gonna be so good.
Yeah, it's going to be good. It's really, really funny. So let me share I'm opening up our document here. So that will be on Sunday, September 8th at 11:15 a.m. in Faith's Discord. And I will be putting the link to her Discord on in the description of this video after we're done being live. The comment section will turn into like a description and stuff, and you can click on the link there to join Faith's Discord. So
it's 11:15 Pacific time.
Pacific time, yes. Thank you. Yeah, I'm Pacific time, so sometimes I just say Pacific time.
Yeah,
but that's
which is the time we started today, basically in my time.
Yeah,
exactly. Sundays at 11:15 a.m. seems like a time we can all do. Pacific time.
Well, can I just stop and say thank you very much for doing them at a time which isn't ridiculously late UK time. I have attended a number of live shows that are at 2 a.m. UK time.
Oh no! I couldn't do it.
You didn't want to do that.
No.
Co-host. Awesome. Dia's here. Welcome. Hi, Dia. And Mimi has seen The Death of Stalin, so that's really exciting.
Definitely join us anyway. Join us if you've even seen it, because you're going to see our reactions to it.
Yes. Please.
Yeah, I have a confession. My husband said, "We've seen that movie. Don't you remember watching that movie?" I was like, I have no memory. So probably it was in the evening and I was falling asleep and he thought I was actively watching it, but I was really don't. I don't have any memory of it.
It's hilarious. All right. So, no, we are going to stream it in Faith's Discord. So I will, when we go on to sharing our TBRs and stuff, I will share the link so you guys can find it. So Faith's Discord, I will be screen sharing it on September 8th, Sunday, September 8th at 11:15 a.m. Pacific time. So if I could stream it on YouTube, I would, but they would not let me do that. My stream would get taken down. So
Yeah.
All right. And then we're going to have one other live show as well, and that will be the group discussion. So our group pick was chosen by the YouTube voters on my community page. So that group pick is going to be The Soviet Union, A Very Short Introduction by Stephen Lovell.
There you go.
Yes. We were like, let's be on the nose about this. So I'll screen share a picture of that too, so you guys can see that.
I actually think it's quite sensible to pick a short, easy to get hold of book for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It'll give us, because we're all planning on, studying we wanted to have a group pick that was like focused on the Soviet Union, Russia, and then everybody's prompts can be whatever their interest is, Germany or dissidents, North Korea. We have several topics that people are interested in that are related to communism. I know Mimi was talking about like Mexican Revolution, so there's a lot of communists. It's a huge topic, but we wanted our group pick to be focused on Russia and the Soviet Union this year. But and then we're gonna have a live. Yeah, go ahead.
What was the date for the live group discussion of the book?
Yes, so that's gonna be September 28th. And that will be a Saturday, so we can do it a little earlier because I won't have church. So that'll be at 10:15 a.m. Pacific time. And that'll be here on my channel. So let me show you guys a picture of our group pick so that you know what the book is. It's like that series, that very short introduction series where there's like a bazillion of them.
Yeah.
I find them quite good as a starting point when you're looking for
exactly
in.
Yeah, I feel like the real research that is going to happen here for people is they're going to be researching their own stuff. But we'll have something to talk about for the group live show that way.
Perfect.
All right. So I will get going sharing the link to Faith's Discord. But why don't we'll go backwards this time. Peg, do you want to start first with your kind of reading prompt idea and
/
recommendations?
Or the TBR? Okay. Yeah, sorry if I go out of order, if I do it all right now. If I just well, I know so that the topic of communism, and like Christy was saying, we're going to stay focused on Russia, but we do have some people ranging a little further afield, right? Like North Korea, Germany, Eastern Europe. So I'm going to stay close to home and just say how let's look at the history of communism and how it began. And usually that we talk of Bolsheviks, right? We talk about the Russian Revolution. So I think that is a good starting point for me are writers like Robert Service, Richard Pipes. You've got A People's Tragedy by Orlando. Is it Figes? Figes. Thank you. I never know how to pronounce it. So
he actually taught me very briefly, and I still can't remember how to pronounce his surname properly. So
really,
that would happen to me.
Yes, I'm like, I don't know how to do this. So what I did is I have like a full set of Richard Pipes's works. I didn't bring the one that is the Russia under the old regime, which is kind of like his first book, but then he moves into this big, lovely book on the Russian Revolution. And this is definitely something that will take you a while to read, but I can't recommend Richard Pipes' work enough. I love his work. And then the second book would be Russia under the Bolshevik regime, which is where we get into actually getting into the nuts and bolts of just the structure, as the Bolsheviks and they came into power, then the Mensheviks, and then, just everything that happened in the early stages of the Russian Revolution. I could definitely talk about, Richard Pipes and the Bolsheviks. But one thing, now these are books that I'm offering up as suggestions, like suggested readings if you want to learn more about Russian Revolution. I'll show you two of the books that I'm really eager to. I'm going to try to actually, I've got 2 books on my TBR, you guys. I'm going to try to get to at least one of them this month because they're so good. Another writer I really recommend to learn about communism is David Satter. He kind of writes from a perspective of kind of a study of communism. I've got 3 of his books, and I think I've read 2 of them. I think he's mostly known for It Was a Long Time Ago and It Never Happened Anyway, Russia and the Communist Past. So I think this would be another great, are you familiar with this book, Christy? I kind of see you.
I want to read that. Yeah, when I was looking for group pick options, that was one of the ones I was looking at very hard.
Yeah, I really enjoy David Satter. And they're not terribly, huge and intimidating. He's an accessible writer. And It Was a Long Time Ago and It Never Happened Anyway, I think sums up just the riddle of Russia and their love affair / it's love-hate relationship with communism. They're very their troubled history with memory. It's with people in Russia who lived through this time frame. Memory is a big thing there, because have you heard that now Stalin might be getting a new statue? There are interesting things. Like, people are actually like, well, Stalin wasn't that bad, actually. Maybe he was a hero. So I've read different little stories here and there coming out that places in Russia, Stalin's getting a renaissance. So I think David Satter can help a lot of people understand that maybe. Another great book by David Satter is Age of Delirium, The Decline and Fall of the Soviet Union. So again, I really enjoy his work. I find he's a really accessible writer. And this was his most recent book, which I also highly recommend. The Less You Know, the Better You Sleep. Russia's Road to Terror and Dictatorship under Yeltsin and Putin.
He's got some good titles. How do you spell his last name?
Satter. It's Satter.
Okay.
So it's like sitter, but with an A.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. The Less You Know, the Better You Sleep. This was really a really powerful book too, kind of talking about maybe false flag operations that Putin did to generate the wars he wanted to annihilate his enemies. Again, Putin, he's very much, make no mistake about it, he was mortified when the Soviet Union collapsed. That was a crushing blow to him, which really defines his psychology and his personality and what he's doing, why he's doing it right now. So anyway, okay, moving right along. There's 2 more books I haven't read, but I'm guessing that they're going to be really good. One of them is publishing in the next 2 weeks, so I've got an advanced review copy, but I'm really wanting to read it this month. The other book I want to read is Ruling Russia: Authoritarianism from the Revolution to Putin. So again, this is by William Zimmerman. This is more of like a political study of authoritarianism and how it evolved, from the Russian Revolution. Slim volume, so I don't think it's too intimidating at all. But I'd like to see what William Zimmerman has to say on that. And then I'm sure many of you will recognize this historian. I wanted to get more of a recent writer on Russian history, and that would be Sean McMeekin. what's interesting is everyone's really raved about his last book, which was Stalin's War. I have not read that yet, but so it's interesting. I'm going to read his newest book this month or September, and then I'm going to go back and read Stalin's War. But Sean McMeekin has a new book coming out September 10th, and I just found that it's fascinating. To Overthrow the World, the Rise and Fall and Rise of Communism. So again, it's a study where it's going to be looking at, is communism, is it really dead? Is it coming back? It rose, it fell, and now I think he's making the case here. It's rising again. So I just thought it was a timely pick. And again, it's coming out September 10th. And I just was like, I have to include this book in Red September because it's going to hit all the points for me. So
I'm going to read that.
Yes. And then I'll go back and read Stalin's War, which is just, more about his military leadership and how he took over World War II, military strategy and planning and stuff. So how's that? Did I do okay, Christy?
That was brilliant. I'm so excited.
Since I went first, I didn't have anyone to copy. So I kind of think I did it okay.
Was perfect. Because you've studied Russian history quite a lot. So you have
as an amateur. Yeah, but
so you have a lot to offer. So thank you so much for that.
Oh, sure. And there's tons more books I have on Russia and Soviet history. I just had to winnow it down to what could really help people coming to this, fresh and new without being too daunting.
That is perfect. So to put your challenge, your kind of prompt in a couple words, you would say read a history on the Russian Revolution or I don't know how to phrase that, but I mean, how did I put it in our planning doc? I think I said something along the lines of read a book on the Russian Revolution or the Bolsheviks or a political study on communism. Would that work? Oh yes. Bolshevism, Russian Revolution, political studies, communism.
Yeah.
So your prompt is kind of it's like what our group book is supposed to be hopefully helping with.
Yeah. So, and I consider this more of a political analysis and study, but as a general history, but it's definitely more pointed analysis. So David Satter. Yeah.
Excellent. So diving deeper into the Soviet Union.
Yes.
So thank you. Excellent. That was perfect. And maybe I'll ask you for those titles later so I can
absolutely. I'll hook you up. I'll put them in the doc too.
Oh yeah, perfect. Thank you. Now, Faith, what were you just holding up? What was that?
Oh, I was just holding up that I took notes. I was taking copious notes.
Excellent. Okay.
Excellent.
I did share the link to Faith's Discord, so let me just screen share and show you guys. It's on our community, my community page for my YouTube. So I'll just screen share so you can see what it looks like. This is the link to Faith's Discord if you want to join us for the screen share of the death of Stalin on Sunday, September 9th at 11:15 a.m. So go join Faith's Discord there. And I'll also put all this information. It's going also in the description to this live show, so you can find it there as well. Would you like to go next, Faith?
Okay. Let's see. What am I doing? I'm not doing my TBR. I'm just doing.
Yeah. Why don't you do your prompt first, and then we can kind of talk about TBR later.
So my prompt was inspired by my TBR, and so it's read a first-person account of a dissident or someone who was fighting the oppression in the Soviet Union or any of the satellite states. So that's my prompt, and I kind of have to show my TBR because that's what I'm focusing on myself. And so I am reading the Gulag Archipelago, right? I always say it wrong, and then my husband corrects me, but I think I said it right. So I'm reading this. At the beginning of this year, I had this ambitious. I mean, it was so untenable. But I was going to read all 3 volumes this year. I'm finally getting around to the first volume. But of course, this is a classic, and about someone who was a dissident who wrote this amazing account of just the brutality and the absurdity of the whole thing. So that's my big read. And then I'm going to read this book by Lovell. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Disturbing the Peace. And he was the Czechoslovakian dissident who defied the Soviet Union and I guess helped Czechoslovakia break away. And then I think he became president. Yeah, so this was before it had broken into, the sub-countries that it is now. So yeah, it says in December 1989, rather, the celebrated playwright and defender of human rights, Václav Havel, was elected president of Czechoslovakia. And so this is a different type of memoir. It's actually an interview, a really, really long interview that went on for months and months. And it doesn't look like heavy reading. I mean, probably it's very complicated, all the politics and everything. But because it's in interview form, there's something about it that seems a little lighter. And I think it's going to be really interesting. I cannot remember when I purchased this book. I must have bought it like 20 years ago, and it sat on my shelf. And I really wanted to read it. And so that's why I kind of started steering towards people who were opposing the totalitarian, reign of the Soviet state. So that's another book that I'm reading. Those are the 2 books that I'm focusing on. And I wanted to recommend where did I put this? Some books by dissidents. Now, I don't know if I can recommend them. I'm just mentioning them. I know I've read more. I know I've read more than this, but I can't come up with it right now. But I read a book by this priest, and I cannot remember how to pronounce his name. Does anybody know? Ciszek? It's Ciszek.
Sejek? Maybe?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. But anyway, he wrote a book called With God in Russia. And he was actually an American of Eastern European parents who went into when became the Soviet Union after when was this? When did he go in? I think it was no. I'm getting this all wrong. I think it was right after World War II. He actually snuck into the Soviet Union. So he's not a dissident in the sense that he was born in Russia, but he spoke Russian, and he snuck in and to sort of be a missionary to people there. And his memoir is called With God in Russia. And he was caught, and he spent, I don't know how many years in solitary. He spent, I think, a total of 23 years in the prison system. He was at, labor camps. And then after he was released, he was like under kind of house arrest. With God in Russia tells the story. It's his memoir. He was finally released by John F. Kennedy, got him out. They exchanged like a spy for him or something like that. But this is his second book. I don't know what I did with God in Russia. I had it and it's gone. I think I must have lent it to somebody or something. So that's more of a straight memoir. This is a spiritual memoir. So this is like how he held it together for 23 years in this horrible situation. Mm-hmm. So this is more, this is only like if you're more spiritually inclined, but With God in Russia is just the memoir of what went on. So it doesn't quite fit my prompt because it's not really a dissident, but it does give you insight into the oppression and the prison system and how absurd the trials were and all that stuff. So really, really good read. I know I've read more by dissidents, but I don't know. I can't recall them. So I did look up some other things. I was just Googling around, looking through Amazon, and I'll just mention some of the names. They sound really interesting to me. One of them was The Universe Behind Barbed Wire by Miroslav Marinovich. And it's about the Soviet Ukraine, a dissident in the Soviet Ukraine. And then another one is An Accidental Dissident, The Life and Times of a Christian in Communist Romania. I'm interested in that one the most because I have a friend who's Romanian, whose parents fled like in the 70s. So she was about, I don't know how old she was, 9 or 10 or whatever when they fled. And then another one that I found is called The Communist and the Communist's Daughter, a memoir. And that seems to be available only on Kindle. I think it's out of stock. I didn't write down where that would. I don't know if that's the Soviet Union or some satellite state. And then another one is The Dissidents, a memoir of working with the resistance in Russia, 1960 to 1990, by Peter Redaway. And I think that's like telling the stories of different people. It might be like a compilation. And then just two more. The Hunger Book, a memoir from communist Poland by Agata Isabella Brewer. And then the last one is The Girl from the Metropole Hotel. And was that a book that you mentioned, Christy?
Yeah, Penny told me about it. So I actually want to read that.
Okay,
well.
yeah. And I cannot pronounce her. Ludmila Petrashevskaya, something like that. I can't pronounce it. Anyway, so those are just some just names, books that I Googled that sounded interesting to me on the topic.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You're such a rebel, Faith.
Hey, Faith, could you repeat that book about the Polish communist story?
Yes, it's The Hunger Book.
Ah, okay.
A memoir from communist Poland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I am really, the books that you've just recommended or told us about, especially the Father Walter Zizek or something.
Yeah,
I definitely want to read With God in Russia. As soon as you told me about that, and then He Leadeth Me, I think I'm definitely going to add those to my.
Yeah, what was amazing about this was the thing that I remember the most from it is he was in solitary confinement for like 8 years or something. Wow. And most people go crazy, and he didn't. And it was because he was a priest, and he just pretended like he was a monk. And so he would pray at certain times of the day. And like he just decided he was a monk, like he'd been called to be a monk in this. And that's how he got through it sanely. Like it was just amazing. And the thing is, he had a good memory, and he had memorized so many Psalms and things. So he had like this internal resource that kept him grounded so that he didn't go insane.
It's amazing.
Faith, have you ever seen The Shoes of the Fisherman?
Oh, no.
You know what? I remember my parents had that book. I never read it by Morris West or something.
Yeah, and they made a film. They made a film of it with the man that played Anthony Quinn.
I love Anthony Quinn.
And he basically plays a Soviet cardinal who was in the Soviet Union who'd been arrested and was in a labor camp. And then for complicated political reasons, the Russians release him, and he ends up against his own better judgment becoming Pope. And it's it's the story of how he responds to that and to the challenge that he's faced, because basically there's a global crisis, and the Russians have maneuvered him into as part because they think he can get things done, not because he's a communist, but because they think he can get things done.
He's
not a puppet. He's not actually a puppet. He's like they just think his philosophy might get things moving in a way that somebody else might not. It's a really brilliant film because it really challenges all the issues around the church and wealth and the church and
all right,
and power. It's a really good film. I really recommend the film.
I love Anthony Quinn, so I'm surprised that I haven't watched it because I've watched a lot of his movies, and I've never read that book because I remember it sitting on my parents' bookshelf.
Yeah,
so
I've read the book. But I saw the film first and then read the book afterwards.
Oh, okay. All right. That's cool. Another thing that's interesting is the involvement of Pope John Paul II in the fall of the Soviet Union, because he really got Poland, he really encouraged the Polish people, and he's part of how it crumbled, So that's an interesting aspect too. Speaking of communism and popes, yeah.
Wow. So I always love how you bring the faith aspect to it, Faith. Thank you so much.
My name. What can I say?
I always feel like the godless heathen on these live shows.
All right.
Sorry, Tony. We're glad you're here.
We have to bring the diversity of opinion.
That's right.
But I'm getting great reading recommendations so far, and we're not even halfway through. I'm writing down a bunch of names as well here. And thanks, Tony, for recommending The Shoes of the Fisherman, because now I
that's exciting. Yeah, I got to write that down too.
Maybe that can be our watch along next year.
Yeah,
I wrote it down in case. So we asked in the chat what you guys.
I was going to talk about the books that I read when I took this Russian history course, and the guy had us read novels along with it. So the first, and I'm missing two of them, but the first one was "And Quiet Flows the Dawn," which I think I recommended as a group read, but it's a very long novel, and it's you follow some Cossack soldiers, young kind of callow guys who are caught up, in World War I and then the Revolution, and so it was published, during Courtney, you might know this. It was published by the Soviet government, let it be published. So I guess it didn't seem like they were very, it's heroic, and it talked about all the terrible things. And so that was the first one we read, and then we read this one by Solzhenitsyn, if I'm saying that right. One Day in the Life of Ivan Denisovich.
Ivan Denisovich.
So that's a short book. And then we read I don't have a book to hold up, but it was called, I looked this up. It's included. I read it. It was like a novella or a long short story. Where did I write this down? Anyway, I think it was called Nervous People. And it was a collection of books, and Quiet Flows On, yeah. And it had the funniest story in it. I think it was called The Apartment, but it's not, I looked that up, and there's another very interesting sounding book called The Apartment about Russian history. But this was a short story by this, I wrote down the names and now I don't know what I did with it. Maybe I'll get it to you. Oh no, I did write it down. Okay, here it is. By Mikhail Zoshchenko. So Nervous People by Mikhail Zoshchenko. Anyway, he writes really satirical, absurd, very funny short stories that are just lampooning the whole bureaucracy that was the Soviet state. So in this story that we had to read, or novella that we had to read in class, I still remember it so well. It was about this family that had outgrown its apartment, and its apartment's falling apart, and they just want to get a new place to live. And it takes years. Like there's a long waiting list, and just there's this whole underground economy that's going on, and this whole social thing going on below the surface so people can get things done. And it was very, very funny. So, and he writes lots of short stories that are like that. So we read that. And then the last thing we read was The Master and Margarita. And this is a really old copy. I don't even know if this was the copy that I read or if I bought this secondhand or something. I had a bunch of books get damaged in a flood, so I never remember. But anyway, this is also absurd and crazy and funny. I didn't realize it was funny till like halfway through, and then I realized, oh, he's actually being funny. I just thought this is so weird. This guy's on drugs. Yeah, I didn't get it. But it seems like the Russians are either like that, like even Dostoevsky. They're either like really, really bleak, or they're really, really zany, crazy, over the top, absurd. Like that's how they deal with things. But anyway,
High drama.
Yeah, those are the four books. Yeah,
I always think even the bleak ones are actually funny.
Yeah.
They just have a very dark sense of humor.
Yeah.
Have you guys seen that meme? You know, the French write, "I died for liberty," and you know, all the things that different nationalities die for in their literature. And Russia is, "I die." You know, that's, but for real though, it's funny. Like it's actually funny. Like you can't see the humor in it. It would be like endlessly grim. But
yeah.
They have a power to laugh. They have the power to laugh when it's really dark. That's what I appreciate that about. I wanted to cover.
That's it for me. That's it for me. I'm done now.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Faith. We had some chatting in the comments about what people are reading, and Mimi says she's reading Trotsky, which I can relate to. That's what we're going to be reading all year, Tony and Mimi and I.
Yeah, that's going to take a while.
Yeah. And Penny had mentioned that she's going to be reading Crime and Punishment again. So that's just like timed really well. It's not necessarily like specifically about the communist period, but Dostoevsky's writing was he was writing against the trains of thought that kind of led Russia to communism. And you know, Crime and Punishment is very much a part of that. And we had some people saying, "Oh, I think they're kind of here, you know, to find what they want to read. They don't know yet what they're reading." And then we had Bolshevism, The Road to Revolution. So that could be cool for Peg's challenge.
Yeah. Alan Woods. I don't think I've read him, so let me check that out.
I know, right? Me too. Always get so many great.
Yeah, we're all sharing the books that we've come across in our lifetimes. It's fantastic.
Yes, it is. And so Penny is also going to be reading The Death of Ivan Ilyich, which is a wonderful, wonderful story. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And White Nights from Dostoevsky and City Folk and Country Folk. I want to read that one too. City Folk and Country Folk. So, hello, Dream in the Garden. Welcome.
Hello.
Okay, so, and then Penny said she's also read And Quiet Flows the Dawn, or it's on her list to read. So thank you guys for reading in.
I've got that on my list. I've got that on my list for Remembrance Reads in November.
Ooh, perfect. So yeah, Tony's gonna be. You're planning to post a video in October for the first time. Right? Yeah,
because I've been talking. Christy knows this. I've been talking about launching a booktube. Launching, like I got like the power to launch anything, but a booktube channel finally. And Christy knows I've been talking about this for about 4 years, and I'm going to do it with every year for the last 4 years. I've done what I call Remembrance Reads, which is in November. I devote the entire month to reading stuff about World War I, history, poetry, memoirs, etc. Because it's a period I've been fascinated with since I was at school. And October, I'm going to do a video which is going to be some recommendations for books to read about World War One. I might split it into two, because I might do one that's history and one that's fiction, poetry, memoir. Or I might do history and memoir as one, and poetry and fiction as the other one. Because I can easily do at least 50 off the top of my head, so I don't want it to be that long, so I'll try and narrow it down a bit.
Wow.
So I'm going to put Quiet Flows the Dawn on, because I want to do the Eastern Front is something I want to focus on this year's Remembrance Reads. So
Well, this is perfect timing. Do you want to go ahead and share your prompt idea and recommendations and/or TBR?
Yeah.
Great.
My recommendations and my TBR are the same thing, by the way.
Okay,
So
great.
fundamentally, just because I thought I'd make it easier. So my prompt is going to be read a book about, and it's slightly wishy-washy, so you'll have to forgive me on this one. Read a book about Rosa Luxemburg, German communism, which means from the 1919 revolution that failed through to the end of East Germany, the German Democratic Republic, as was. A place that I have visited and went through Checkpoint Charlie to visit, I will point out.
Wow.
So that's my prompt. I'm going to focus mainly, though, with one exception, actually two exceptions, on Rosa Luxemburg, who has been something of a heroine of mine since I have a little. I should try and get it into my little Rosa Luxemburg badge that I've had for a while. I've been intending to read. I've been collecting Rosa Luxemburg books for a while because I've been intending to work on a project, and I haven't actually got. As usual with me, I've collected lots of books and haven't got around to reading any of them. with a couple of exceptions. So what I'm going to do, so the first thing I'm going to recommend, and this is a reread from me, but I'm going to recommend it because I think it's a very good introduction to Rosa Luxemburg. It's Red Rosa. Now I keep wanting to call it a graphic novel, but it's not a novel. It's a graphic memoir, effectively, or graphic biography, and it's a very good introduction to her, not just her life, but her philosophy and ideas as well. It manages to pack a lot into what is quite a short little book. But I would recommend if anybody's going to read anything about Rosa Luxemburg, this is probably the easiest and best way in. On the chunkier side, I thought I wanted to read some of her own work. So one of the things I'm going to read is the Letters of Rosa Luxemburg, which is a much chunkier collection. This goes back throughout her life, back to like the 1890s through to just before she died. Oh, sorry, died is too polite. Well, just before she was murdered. On the subject of which, The Murder of Rosa Luxemburg, by Klaus Geitinger. This is a translation. I think they originally published in German. This is basically an account of how she died and who was responsible. It's quite short and it's quite easily read because it's quite a nice sort of easy to read book. I read some of the introduction to this before today, so that's that. Then another Rosa Luxemburg, a collection of her own works, Socialism or Barbarism, which is just a short collection of some of her actual own thoughts and works. So there's that, and then on more German things. There's The Lost Revolution, Germany, 1918 to 1923, by Chris Harman. This came out fairly recently, I think it actually came out in 2019? Because obviously there were lots of this is an old book that they reprinted for 2019 later. But obviously 2019 was the 100th anniversary of Rosa Luxemburg's death and the German Revolution. So there were a few things published then that were thing. This I have read bits of, but I haven't read the whole thing. So that's on my TBR. And finally, possibly the most academic book on the list, Weimar Communism as a Mass Movement, 1918 to 1933, by Ralph Hofrogger and Norman Laporte. It's editors, so I think it's actually a series of sort of articles. But one of those history books that is a collection of articles by different people about the subject and different eras of the subject. In fact, let's have a look at what some of the titles are. So you've got Revolutionary Origins, the KPD between revolution and real politics, communism and trade unions, reaching beyond the party, And there's actually finally one on Stalin, the third period in the German catastrophe, which is a very polite way of talking about Hitler. And that's my TBR and recommendations. I did go through the full list of stuff that I owned on Rosa Luxemburg and communism in general, but I wanted to focus on the stuff that I think is in print and is relatively straightforward to get hold of.
Yeah.
I can't speak for the USA. I know that's what everybody is on this here above me. But I think definitely the letters of Rosa Luxemburg and Red Roses should be easily available in the States, I think. I think the murder of Rosa Luxemburg came out in 2019 for the anniversary, so I think that's probably available. So I've got the hard copy, and Socialism Barbarism. Not sure about the Lost Revolution, I'll be honest, because that was a printed. I picked that up. There's a socialist bookshop in central London near the British Museum, which is where that specialises in stuff that you probably can't get from a lot of other places. That I bought it from there, so I don't know how easy that one is to get hold of. And that's it. That's my selection.
Tony, hey Tony, have you ever read Darkness at Noon by Arthur Kessler?
Yeah, a long.
It's a novel. It's a novel. It's not nonfiction.
Yeah, a long time ago. I went through a phase from about 19 to 25 of reading. I read Kostler, Orwell, basically anybody that was writing about totalitarianism, either as fiction or non-fiction, and which made for a very depressing early 20s. But I was also
indeed Darkness at Noon is so depressing. But wasn't he a German communist, Arthur Kessler? I don't know how to say his name.
Yeah, but I think wasn't he captured in Spain? From what I remember, wasn't he?
I don't remember, but I just associate him with. I thought he was a German communist.
Yeah. I need to reread that book. It's been.
Yeah, I remember it really depressed me for weeks afterwards. It's really, really bleak.
Yeah. To be fair, although it was very depressing, I was also equally quite drunk a lot of the time. So
that's a very bad combination.
My early 20s are a balance of alcohol and depressing books. So those are only just. Those are my recommendations. I have put a list on Excel that I sent to Christy of all the other books that I pulled that are on my communism list so you can put that up somewhere for people to look at if there's other suggestions on there, because there was what was on that list. There's a load of other Rosa Luxemburg stuff, but most of that's out of print. Because there was a phase there were a lot of biographies about her in the 50s and 60s, and then there was she sort of fell out of fashion. There was a big gap before people started publishing stuff about her again. So a lot of that stuff is out of print, but I've managed to get hold of it. And then I've got stuff like Gulag: A History of the Soviet Camps by Anne Applebaum, and a load of books on Russia and communism. There's I think Peg, you mentioned Robert Service. I've got Comrades: Communism: A World History by Robert Service.
Yeah, that's great.
But I've sent them because I didn't want to talk about all those because I wanted to focus on Rosa Luxemburg. Oh, yeah, there you go.
Oh, there we go.
Is that big enough?
I think I saw a children's board book on Rosa Luxemburg.
Yeah, now she's come. I think the centenary.
I know this is like a little board book for little kids. Yeah. Like they can't handle paper because they'll tear it. Or whatever. It's like
yeah, she's now. I think she's become also because she's a rare woman.
Yeah,
communist ideas person. There's a proper name for that, and I can't remember what it is. I think also she's come back into as historians have started to care more about that about women's place in history. She's come back into and also the way she died is so horrendous that she does have a sort of heroic martyrdom attached to her. Although I was reading in the murder of Rosa Luxemburg, the guy that killed her, so because she was killed at the same time as Karl Liebknecht, because they were the two leaders of the Spartacist movement, which was the extreme left of the KBD, and the bloke that killed them said that Liebknecht was a coward, and pretended he wasn't Karl Liebknecht. But he said Rosa Luxemburg just sat in the corner of his office reading a book, even though she knew what was coming. She just sat there and read a book. So,
Wow.
Good under pressure.
Mm.
well, she has a very interesting life because she was born in what was then Polish Russia, and ended up in Germany during World War One. She was arrested during World War One for being anti-war. It's a whole thing, but for me, she's a hero. And also, I think the loss of her death, took out somebody that might have put an alternative take that wasn't quite as extreme as Leninism. But that might be wishful thinking. That because you don't know for definite.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Well, that's a great. I love that your prompt is so. It's like very niche. Like for like a readathon about communism, I wasn't ever like so focused on Germany, but that's really interesting. Thank you for bringing that to the table.
It's partly because I've as I said, Rosa Luxemburg has been a heroine of mine since I was at university when I was a little wannabe communist. But I was also fascinated by like Germany post the First World War through the Weimar Republic. I find if I had a TARDIS, I would love to go back to the Weimar Republic. Admittedly, probably heavily armed or with bodyguards, just to be on the safe side. But that and then the rise of Nazi Germany. Is always fascinating me.
I wasn't even aware of the connections there. Like when I was asking for recommendations for our potential group pick, like I think it was Dia had sent me several that were like related to Nazi Germany, and I was like, is that communism? I was like, but yeah. So now I'm seeing the connections. So thank you.
Well, I should briefly mention. Sorry, everybody, to keep waffling on. But I should also recommend a book I read very recently that's sort of tangentially, because it talks a lot about the Communist Party and why it failed. It's called 1923, the year of Hitler's coup. And it's about that year which ended with Hitler, the Munich Putsch, and that Hitler's failure there. And it talks a lot about how the Communist Party failed to take advantage of its position that it was in, and then eventually the Nazis just took over. And actually, there's another book called "The Rise and Fall of Italian Fascism" by John Foote. That also although it's about the rise of fascism, there's also a lot in there about Italian communism and how the fascists outmaneuvered the Italian communists.
That would be really interesting. A couple of years ago, I read The Rise and Fall of, by William Shire, The Rise and Fall of Hitler, or what was it?
The Third Reich. Or the Third Reich.
There you go. The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. And that also has a lot in it about, of course, Weimar and Mussolini was the father of fascism, and Hitler was kind of admired him, and then Hitler surpassed him, and of course, before Mussolini came to a bad end. Well, not that
but I recommend both those books, not necessarily for this, but for a general sort of how communism in Europe got outmaneuvered by the right.
I would even add one more book that I've read recently. And Tony, I don't know if it's on your TBR, if you read it already, but I read recently a brand new book by Timothy Rickman called Takeover: Hitler's Final Rise to Power. And also tangentially, it is a fantastic read. And it talks about how he outmaneuvered. It talks about his wars with the street fighting with the communists and how they were such a focus of his. Like it's really important to know, what Hitler thought about communism and why he thought it was such a dreaded, enemy to, what you're going to say.
I recommend both those books because they both changed my mind on things that I had what I would call firm opinions on, but they were mostly sort of opinions that were based on stuff I learned at university 40 years ago, or whenever it was, not 40 years ago, 30 years ago, about both 1923, the French occupation of the Ruhr, the French Belgian occupation of the Ruhr, 1923 itself, and also about how I always had Italian fascism in my head as a soft thing versus Nazism. And if you talk body count, it probably is, but if you talk violence, and the use of violence to get your way in politics, then it's as bad as Nazi Germany. And that John Foote book really, on those are in those sense. But again, I'll stop talking now because otherwise, as Christy knows, I have a habit. I think as I'm talking. So what happens is I'll get onto a tangent, and because I'll be moving to the next thing. So I'll stop now because otherwise I won't stop.
There's just so many good books out there to read. Yeah. I know it's just go on all day long about it, but I know.
And that's part of the fun of this is getting to get together and talk about all the things we're excited to read, honestly, because it's, like I said, a huge topic. And I think I didn't even talk about why I'm interested. But I'll get to me after Courtney. I want to make sure we get Courtney in there in case anybody has to go. I want to go, Courtney.
Okay, so like I mentioned at the beginning, it's kind of been Russian literature that got me more interested in communism and all of this. So I've only been reading Russian literature of any kind for 5 years. War and Peace was my first one. That's what got me into Russian literature. And so I haven't read like as much nonfiction, but every time that I read things, it kind of spurs more questions. And so I've started looking into more of that. So my kind of topic is more focused on Russia and reading like things from the Soviet era by Russians or about Russia in that time. So it could be fiction or nonfiction. And I have a stack of books that I'll show. I am a slow reader, so I don't know how much of this I will get to at all, but these are all ones that I'm traveling right now. You can probably see that I'm in a van, and these are all ones that I happen to have lugged with me. So clearly I'm wanting to read them. So the first thing that I'll mention is the Gulag Archipelago. So I know Faith is reading volume 1 of this. I am reading volume 3. I haven't started it yet, but I did volume 1 and volume 2 the past 2 years, and then volume 3 this year. So I will not finish this in September because it usually takes me 3 or 4 months to read a volume. But I will be reading this one, hopefully starting in September. So that's by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. And yeah, like Faith said, it kind of follows not just his experience with like being in the Gulag and being in the Russian prison system of that time, but like general history of that and kind of other accounts from other people as well. So it involves a lot. And then I also have some other Solzhenitsyn that I think it can be interesting to read. This is one that I have not read yet, but it's it's a letter to the Soviet leaders by Solzhenitsyn. I don't know how easy this one is to get, but it's literally, I think, just like a letter that he wrote at some point to the Soviet leaders and what he thinks about what they were doing. So yeah, that one is again by Solzhenitsyn, and I haven't read that yet. It's super tiny, so this might actually be one that I can complete during the month of September. And then I also have a couple of other Solzhenitsyns with me. August 1914, which I think he had a series. I don't know if it was ever completed, but this was kind of the beginning of it and kind of, showing the beginnings of like the Russian Revolution, and well, not the beginning of the Russian Revolution, but this is around the time that Solzhenitsyn was born. And so, his life and how it was affected. So this is a novel kind of following in that time period. And then the others, whatever were done of them, were kind of in the years following that. So I have that. I would really like to read it, but don't know if I'll actually get to it this September or not. Another Solzhenitsyn, so see, you can tell I probably have a Solzhenitsyn thing going, is Warning to the West, which this one if you haven't read it, it's super short, and if you can find it, it's very interesting. These are speeches. I think they were all speeches in a radio like interview that he did in the United States and in Great Britain in the 1970s. And so it's kind of just him talking about what he saw from, his perspective in the Soviet Union and in Russia. And like it says, warning to the West, like, I see these things happening in your countries. You need to do something about it, because this doesn't end well. So that's what this is. And I thought this one was really interesting, and I would like to read it again. So I have read this one and thought that it was really interesting. Another Solzhenitsyn, I think the last Solzhenitsyn that I have here is, yeah, actually, it's not the last one I have. I have another one. This one is Alexander Solzhenitsyn's Stories and Prose Poems. So this one includes several stories of his. Let me see how many it has. Yeah, it has like 6 or 7 stories, and then like 15 like prose poems that all, again, kind of have to do with some of his own experience and things. So this one I might just read pieces of, since it's like shorter work. I wouldn't have to read the whole thing. So I might get this and read part of that. Then this is actually the last Solzhenitsyn that I happen to have with me. And this is a book that I am halfway through and need to one day finish. And that is Cancer Ward by Solzhenitsyn. And this one, like I said, I'm halfway through it. I started it earlier in the year, and then just for whatever reason, obviously the subject matter is a bit heavy. But this one takes place in a Soviet era cancer ward and follows various characters who, are dying or are being treated for various forms of cancer, and just kind of the different treatment methods. And so it is, from what I understand, what a lot of people say is kind of a comparison. Like, he's using the cancer ward to kind of represent the Soviet Union and kind of the political structure and things of the time. But it's also just a really interesting story. Again, they're cancer patients, so it's a little bit bleak, but it's really interesting. And I always find that his stuff that I've read flows really well. So yeah, I think that this one is good. It is kind of big. I think it's 530-ish pages, so it's kind of big. But yeah, it's really interesting what I've read of it so far. And then a couple of non-fictions that I think I just happened to pick up, like in a little free library or something, was, and I think that you mentioned this, Tony, was this Gulag History by Anne Applebaum. I think you mentioned one by her. So I have not read this, but I did pick this one up, I think, like I said, for free or something in a little free library. So I thought this one might be good also to start.
I would recommend anything by Anne Applebaum.
Anything by Anne Applebaum. Okay, good to know. So I'm glad that I found this one.
Yeah.
So this one, which I, again, just picked it up because of the title. I didn't even actually read what it was about, but clearly it's going to be about the gulags. So I'm interested to see that one. Yeah. And then the other one that I picked up, again, I think from a little free library, or my mom got for me, maybe from a little free library, because she knows that I like this stuff, is Soviet Defectors it's a Hoover Institution, Stanford University publication. And yeah, so the KGB wanted list. And so that.
Fantastic.
That looks really interesting.
Oh, I need to look that one up.
So I don't know much about it, but it looks like it could be very interesting.
Yeah.
It looks horribly like it'll be out of print. It's worth looking for.
What's that?
Right. Yeah. That one might be out of print. I have not checked, but could be interesting. And when I get to it, I'll let you all know. And then let's see, the last few that I have that, again, are kind of potential ones, are fiction. And those are by Bulgakov. So I know Faith mentioned The Master of Margarita, which I have read, and I've wanted to read more of his stuff. So the others that I have from him are The White Guard, which this one has been recommended to me, and I'm really excited to read that one. So that one is about a white guard, during the Russian Revolution and stuff. So yeah, I'm interested in that one. And then short ones that I have, which again might make it easier to get through them. The Fatal Eggs is one that I have. So again, that one's tiny. And again, his stuff is satire and can be rather ridiculous and funny. So yeah, that one is one that I have, and I'm looking forward to reading. I don't know if I actually have talked to anybody who's read this before. Maybe some of you have. But I'm interested in that one. And then the last one that I have in that is Heart of a Dog. So again, satire.
Heart of a Dog is brilliant. I've read Heart of a Dog.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. So maybe I'll get to that one because it's little as well. Oh, and one that I don't have here that I actually want to mention is, and I know we talked about it, I think doing it for like a group read was, what is the name of it? The one that's, now I can't remember the name of it. But the one that's about the 20 years like after communism. What is the name of that one? Where she interviewed all of the people. Who's the author? I can't even remember it.
Svetlana X.
Yeah.
Yes.
Alexievich or something.
Yes. Svetlana Alexievich. Yes.
Something. Yes.
Her book.
What is that?
Oh, it's called something the clocks, isn't it, or something after something
Secondhand time.
Oh,
yeah,
Secondhand Time. Yes. Secondhand Time. So I read half of that like 2 years ago, and I had it from the library, and then just life happened and I couldn't finish it. So I'm hoping that I can get that probably as an ebook and read it. So it is not set during the communist era in Russia, but it is where, and I think it was mostly Russians, if I remember correctly. There could have been other Soviet countries represented there, but she went and she interviewed people for like the 20 years following communism and was getting their thoughts about it. Like, were they happy with the way things were? And one thing that I remember was, from what I read, was a really interesting like interview where she was with two different women who were best friends and had known each other forever. One of them was a communist and was pro-communism and wanted communism back, and one of them was anti-communist. And I remember like just thinking that was really interesting. And like she asked them and was like, how do you communicate? Like, how do you have these completely opposed views and remain friends? And they were like, we decided a long time ago that we don't talk politics. Like, we just don't talk about this. We talk about our lives, and we talk about our kids, and we talk about our day-to-day things. They were like, we know that we have different opinions and we just don't talk about it. So yeah, I thought that a lot of the information in there and like the just different perspectives from people was interesting. So I'm hoping to finish that one as well. And I think that's all that I specifically have that I'm hoping to read or potentially read at some point in the future.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I love that you were really spotlighting Solzhenitsyn because, yeah, he's like super. Not only is he from the period, so it's really relevant, but he wrote a lot more than just the Gulag Archipelago, which I didn't even know until like this year. I was like,
yeah,
he's got such a backlist that I had no idea about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you for sharing those. So I will keep mine fairly short because I know we're already going over an hour here. But I also didn't even mention why I'm like really excited for this read along. Partly it's because some of the questions that you guys brought up are part of why I'm so interested. I'm interested because of Dostoevsky. I'm interested to see the difference between Russia now versus communist Russia and stuff like that. So one thing that I've always been really interested in is I think that North and South Korea are a really fascinating thing to study because the South, after the Japanese invaded Korea, the South was given to the US after the Japanese were defeated in World War II. So the South was taken over by the US while they were kind of putting their leadership back in place, and the North was taken over by Russia. And so it's a really interesting study in kind of economic history because the South is like very capitalist, like very, very capitalist. and the North is still communist. So even when the Soviet Union fell, North Korea was like, nope, we're going hard. We're still going to stay communist. And it's been a real disaster, honestly, in North Korea. Just like everybody, like the whole population is malnourished still, but they just keep going. They do not admit defeat. So for me, my prompt is just what I'm constantly interested in, which is North Korea. I'm just so fascinated by North Korean defector memoirs. I think North Korean defectors are really brave because they're putting their life at risk to gain whatever sort of freedom they're looking for. They might be looking for intellectual freedom. Most of them are looking for economic freedom. They don't even know what intellectual freedom is like. They discover that after they leave for economic reasons. A lot of them are starving, and stuff like that. So I've read stories of people from different levels of the socioeconomic scale. So if you kind of want, I have some memoirs that are all like for different reasons, really well worth reading for different reasons. So I'm just gonna screen share because I don't actually own most of these. So maybe I'll just do one at a time here. So here's the first one, Nothing to Envy, by Barbara Dimick, which is really a great one because it covers the stories of 6 North Korean citizens over the course of 15 years, and it is a National Book Award finalist. It's really well written, and I would say if you're going to read one book on North Korea, this is probably the best that I have read. So she talks to people from different areas, like different families, different socioeconomic levels, different experiences totally. So it's a really good picture generally of what life is like in North Korea. And it's very like reputable. It has a really good reputation as far as literature. Sometimes it's hard to, confirm stories of North Korean defectors because North Korea is so secretive. But that's a really good one that is trustworthy for sure. There's no questions about it at all. So I also wanted to share one. She's probably the most famous one. I didn't know about her first, but Yeonmi Park is quite a famous North Korean defector because her story is really unique because a lot of North Korean defectors are young women who were sexually trafficked and in China, and they're from lower socioeconomic statuses. And their stories don't always get told. So some of her story is kind of hard to confirm, but hers is really unique because of her socioeconomic status. She escaped basically because she was starving, and some of her experiences, like she was, like I said, sexually trafficked in China as a teenager, and she made it to South Korea and now lives in the US. And she's quite an eloquent speaker. So she's pretty famous, and I would recommend her book. So there have been some questions about some of the things that she said, but I would say still well worth checking out her story. And then for the next one, this is like one of the first ones that was published. It's quite interesting. It's about the North Korean Gulag. The author, his whole family, including him as a child, were sent to a North Korean Gulag. They were a higher class in North Korea because their family was, they had connections that made sure they were always well provided for, basically. But one member of the family was accused for a crime, and so the whole family was sent to the Gulag for 10 years. And so he talks, and these are like, North Korea does not admit to the existence of these gulags, but we can see them like because of Google Earth and stuff like that. We have satellite footage of them, so we know that they exist. And so this is quite old. When was it published? It was published in 2005. So his experiences were like, I think in the 90s, somewhere around there. So that was really interesting and unique because not everybody can tell you. Most people don't survive and then escape North Korea on top of it, so that they're able to tell their story. So that's a really unique one. And there's several others that I would love to talk about, but I feel like we've been going on for a while. So yeah, that's going to be my topic. As for my TBR, I'm going to be reading a very new book that's in English. It's new in English. It's not a new book. It was published in Korea in like several years ago, like 2008 or 2005 or something. And that is Black Girl from Pyongyang. And this is she's the daughter of the president of Equatorial New Guinea, who was sent to Pyongyang and raised by Kim Il-sung. So I'm very interested in hearing her point of view. And she comes at it from a very sort of, she's looking for her identity, and trying to, because both her father and President Kim Il-sung they've done bad things. And she's like, yeah, and I admit it, they've done bad things, but that wasn't her experience of them. She's kind of trying to bring more balance to the picture. So I don't know how I'll feel about it in the long run, but I'm very interested to hear her point of view. And then there were several ones that everybody here was talking about that I really like. Secondhand Time, I really do want to read that. Mm-hmm. And the one Faith was talking about, In His Footsteps or something, I can't remember what it was called.
The Shoes of the Fisherman?
That movie as well. Yeah, that one as well. But there was like a Faith one that she was talking about. Anyway, I didn't get a chance to write that down. So, but I was taking notes as you guys were talking. There's another one called Kim Il-sung Production that I really want to read as well. This one was recommended to me by somebody who actually lives in South Korea currently. And this is about a film that Kim Jong-il production, excuse me, not Kim Il-sung. It was about a film that he was I was recommended this by somebody who lives in Korea, and I definitely want to check it out. So, and then what else? I do want to read the Red Rosa that Tony recommended. I'm really into graphic novels, and I think that'll be a good introduction to her. And Faith and I are going to be reading the Gulag Archipelago. And that's probably, there's other things too that I have, but I don't know how much I'll be able to get to other than like the group read and the History of the Russian Revolution. So I think that's probably about it. Now, was there anything else that you guys wanted to add to, because we sort of, it sounds like most of you, your TBRs and your recommended reading were very similar, like kind of one and the same, but was there any other books that you guys wanted to mention that you wanted to read for your TBR?
So this isn't a TBR thing, but I did want to mention, because I know, who was it, Mimi mentioned like historical fiction when we started. I don't know if you guys have ever read Ruta Sepetys. She writes historical fiction geared toward young adults, but it's good for all audiences. And she has a couple that are specifically kind of written about communism and around communism. So she has Salt to the Sea, which is about characters from various nations going and, trying to get on the Wilhelm Gustloff, which then sank. And then there's a Romanian one. So that one, I Must Betray You. So that one is right at the end, like in 1989, I think. So right at like the fall of communism. And so, yeah, I just wanted to mention those because if there are people, wanting to pick up something that's maybe not as heavy as some of the others, those could be good options that would still kind of go along with the theme of the reading. And since they're geared toward young adults, they do handle a lot of like heavy content, but in a lighter, more accessible way than some of the other stuff does.
Yeah.
That's a great
book
recommendation.
the book that I meant to mention that I forgot was Beyond the Wall by Katja Hoyer, which is a history of East Germany. I think it was originally published in German because Katja Hoyer is a German historian. She wrote a very good book about Prussia as well. I've got it. I have been meaning to read it for ages, and it's on my list for this month. But whether I'll get around to it with everything else, I don't know. But and I've heard it's had very good reviews from what I've seen as well.
Courtney, what was the name of the author who wrote Salt in the Sea and I Must Betray You?
Ruta Sepetys, Ruta, and then her last name is Septeys. So her family is Lithuanian descent. So they left her when her father was young. They left Lithuania because they were going to be taken and imprisoned. So that's how she ended up in the U.S.
Okay, right. I remember, a middle grade book that I read a long time ago called The Endless Step. Did anyone read that book? It was about, I think I don't know what country they were from originally, but when the Russians, at the end of World War I, when they were in the Russian part of maybe Germany or whatever, and they got sent to Siberia. And it's her memory. Let me look it up real quick. It was like a fictionalized memoir. It's called The Endless Step.
Esther Hautzig?
Yes. That was that. To this day, I still think about that book.
Wow.
Yeah, The Endless Step.
I'll have to look for that one.
So if you want to read a middle grade, that could be
great recommendation.
Yeah.
Also, I did mention in my suggestions, it's worth reading Anna Akhmatova, whose picture is on my mantelpiece there in the middle. Poem Requiem, which is about. It starts with her outside, waiting for her son, I think, who is in the prison in somewhere in Russia. And she's waiting outside, and it starts with a woman approaching her who recognizes her in the queue and says, can you explain this? And Anna Akhmatova says, yes, I can. And the poem goes on from there.
Wow. I wouldn't check that out.
It's quite short. I think it's relatively short, but I recommend everything by Anna Akhmatova, but that's in particular for this read.
Wow, adding some diversity to the list. Thank you. I don't think we had much poetry yet.
Yes, there you go.
Anything else that you guys were reminded of and you wanted to mention?
Well, I wanted to ask about, do we have a reading plan for this? Like, are we going to try and how are we doing this group read?
Usually, I feel like if you have a reading plan, you also have like a text chat, and we don't have one of those. So I just figured we'll talk at the discussion.
Okay.
But if you want to, you
fine.
Totally can.
No, I just wanted to know how we were doing it, because some people have it really structured and some people, that's fine.
I figure we'll discuss it during the live show. But if we end up deciding we want to have a text chat or something, we will announce it everywhere, everyone.
Okay.
Goodness. Sorry. My phone thought I was talking to it. All right. Well, if there's nothing else anybody wants to add, maybe we will let you guys get going with your Sunday. Or rather, your evening, Tony, so you can go to bed.
It's about 9:15 here.
Oh, you can get some reading in before bed.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good idea too. If we have any further updates, we'll let you guys know at the movie viewing.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Huge thanks to all of my co-hosts for coming and chatting and sharing all of their recommendations and TBRs. This is really exciting.
Yeah, it is. I'm really into it. I'm really into it. Yeah.
Same.
I'm starting early.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Christy, I have some more recommendations for like defector stories and defector books that maybe you
Ooh.
haven't seen yet. So I'll shoot
Yeah.
some your way.
Please do. I know there's so many.
Oh,
Like,
North Korea. Did I say North Korea? I meant North Korean.
yeah,
defector.
yeah, I know. Yeah, I know what you meant. Yeah, there's defectors by women who focus more on like how North Koreans should be treated better in South Korea. And there's like every memoir kind of has their own unique thing to add to the story. So they're all quite a tapestry of.
I read one by a guy. I think it was Escape from Camp 14 or something.
I read that too.
That's another
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
Then
that was.
there was controversy years after that, though. Apparently he might have. They said he might have exaggerated or elaborated some of his stories.
Oh,
He
yeah.
says in the book, the author says in the book that he, the first part of this was what he told me. And then he told me later, actually, I just, I forget exactly, like he left out some stuff or something like that.
Yeah.
So he corrects the record like in the book, so that was really interesting. I think that is a problem for North Korean defectors because they don't always want to share everything that they've had to do to survive or that has been done to them,
And I can imagine all that trauma, you might not be recalling things exactly right.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
Exactly. You never know too how it might have impacted their memories. So
yeah.
That's definitely true. And some of them are really young too when they leave. So
yeah.
Like Yami Park, she was like I think 13 when she left. So when people are saying, "Oh, she's not credible," it's like she was 13, she's doing her best to tell her story, but anyways, so that's a whole thing.
That's all I got.
All right. Well, excellent. Thank you guys. This was awesome. Let us know if you're watching this on replay, what your TBR is going to be. And we'll talk about we'll wrap up everything we've been reading on the final live show. We'll just talk about everything we've learned, So,
okay.
Yes.
Hopefully we'll see you guys on the 8th and then the 28th. The 8th and the 28th. That'll help me remember it.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you guys in September.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Bye, everyone. Safe travels, Courtney.